Good afternoon and welcome to another segment of the Jane Irrigation Training Series. I'm Richard Restuccia, Vice President of Water Management Solutions for Jane Irrigation, and today we're going to be talking about a really important subject, and that is the drought in California. Really, it's the drought across the West, but more importantly, how this drought is affecting people. And I don't mean just growers, I'm talking about the people who supply to the growers, people who live in these communities, right? This really is affecting everybody. And sometimes some of the people we talk about go unnoticed. So, but we're not just going to talk about the problem. We're going to provide a few solutions as well, which I always think is important. If you're going to talk about a problem, you better have a solution too. That's part of the deal. So anyway, one of the people or the person we're speaking with today that's going to help us go through this is Erik Wilson. Now, those of you who know Erik know about My Job Depends on Ag, and really the phenomenal success that they have had. And I say they, he and his partner Steve have started this Facebook page back in 2016. If you've been to the Central Valley, you see My Job Depends on Ag stickers, hats. It really brought an awareness to what or how many of us actually depend on agriculture. And it's really all of us. And I don't think everybody had that awareness. I know Erik and I were talking a few months ago, and I said, hey, nowadays, you know, I don't even get that grocery store experience. This was during COVID. I said, you know, now it's just delivered to my door. So a lot of people really are separated from where your food comes from, who grows it, who distributes it, and everything that happens to it. And Erik and Steve with their team at My Job Depends on Ag have done such a wonderful job helping people understand this whole this whole balance of what goes on in agriculture and how you get your food. And boy, we're really appreciative to them for doing it. So Erik, welcome. How are you today?
I'm great. How about you? I'm doing good.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So we were talking a little bit, you're having a decent summer. It's busy up there.
Yeah.
And when I say up there, where are you today?
I'm in West Central California, closer to the coast than I am to the Sierra Nevada. I'm close to Los Banos area, if anybody knows that, hour north of Fresno.
Right. And I think you were saying earlier, it's been a pretty busy summer for you.
Yeah, pretty busy. My spraying business has been busier than past years, and that's just because I kind of fell in a situation where I picked up another account that it didn't normally do too much work for, but you know, the drought. Without that, it would have really impacted me because a lot of the growers that I habitually sprayed for many years, they simply barely had anything going on, and so next year looks pretty bleak, you know, as far as this water situation. Yeah, it's kind of scary for all of us right now. There's a lot of people suffering, and it's gonna challenge that California ag industry like no other next year.
Yeah, so that really was my first question for you this afternoon, and we're at the place where we're seeing the drought written about almost daily, right? And having the Colorado River drought measure hit this week was a lot of news. We tend to see this in the popular press every day. So you've been there a long time.
Yeah.
In perspective, how bad is this drought?
Climatology wise, it's not as bad as previous droughts yet. I mean, we get another dry year, then we're on our way to some pretty bad stuff. You know, the 76, 77 drought was really, really tough, but the droughts of the late 80s and early 90s were probably, you know, precipitation wide across the state was probably more severe. But you know, our group, which you mentioned earlier, My Job Depends on Ag, we started then because we were in another drought that was, you know, not too long ago, from 14, 15, and part of 16. Yeah, 14, 13, 14, 15, 16. I fought 5 years, and that's kind of what was the genesis of our group, was to bring awareness about the water situation. And you know, here we are, it's 2021, and we're still sitting in the same position wise as far as water scarcity problems that we had 5 years ago and beyond that. And our group was to hope to get people to realize that we need to do something about water. It's important for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
You
and
know?
it's also interesting too, because like you said, the drought in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, I remember all these.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember is there was decent space between them. This current drought, and this is what I think, this is my opinion, but it really started in 2006. Right? We had a drought in 2006, and then we went
Yeah.
on for a couple of years, and
Yeah.
we had 2 years where we didn't have a drought,
Yeah.
and then we were back into a drought
Yeah.
till about 2016, and then we had a year in which we weren't in drought, and then the drought started again. And I think, man, that's too many more years of
Yeah.
drought than we had of normal. And
Yeah.
it's been going on for over 10 years. And I
Yeah.
think that it's the cumulativeness of this that is really affected us, I think.
Yeah. For sure. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
So how about the growers? How is this affecting the growers this year?
Well, I think that anytime you run into a friend, a farming friend, it's the conversation is, how's your water? How you doing on water? How much you have left? Do you have any? Is your well still working? Or your wells? Fuel prices to run wells, electric prices, electricity costs, everything's increased. It's just there's not much left in the tank for a lot of people that they're going to be able to survive. To get out of this, the cost of business is high too. Everything has gone up, as we know, and so the cost of production and the cost of water. It's just a lot of people had to tear out orchards and sell their ranches, completely just walk away. Can't do it anymore. So yeah, it's kind of a sad thing to see for sure.
Yeah, that is
Scary.
sad.
It scares me. I mean, I'm an optimistic person by nature, but it's pretty scary knowing what might happen if we have another really dry winter.
Yeah, so we had Mark Eriks on as a guest a couple Fridays ago, and it was interesting. He was painting kind of a bleak picture, and then since that time, an article came out in the Atlantic magazine that he wrote about the Central Valley, and he was literally providing examples of people's wells running dry and what that impact might be.
Yeah.
In your particular area, are you hearing much of that?
Yeah, there's been domestic wells that have been dropped down deeper. But we've typically in our area have had higher groundwater levels than most because we're kind of like in the bathtub of California. We're the beginning stages of where the Delta estuary begins. And so all the rivers would naturally start to this area, in its historical past, probably laid flooded a lot. So it's just lower in elevation. But yeah, I mean, just you don't have to drive very far. And, that's a common thing. But I think there are solutions to fix a lot of this. Especially for our rural non-farming friends who are on domestic wells, there's just has to be, like we spoke earlier, there has to be a diversified way to get water back on the ground. There has to be a plan. There has to be, drip irrigation, flood irrigation, and all the best irrigation practices that we can manage to get water back in the soil in the best areas that are suitable to do so when we can. Set up I have all kinds of ideas on how to accomplish that. I mean, I think California does have the water if it's managed properly. I really, really believe that, not just for agriculture, but all of our rural and urban friends too.
Yeah. So speaking of that, right? So there are some organizations now, right, due to Sigma, that are taking a look at this on a big picture, long-term plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I think too, yes, and I think that sometimes, for an example, I have this book. It was the Bureau of Reclamation, the federal government's beginning stages. It's a pretty detailed outlook on how they began building our infrastructure and having dams and reservoir sites already on the books in preparation to build them, and what they knew about California's climate back then. And there was just one interesting note, and this is what people kind of, just to give an idea of the amount of water we're talking about in California. One winter I think it was 1916 or 1906, I can be corrected. They estimated the total flow that went into the San Joaquin Valley and the Sacramento Valley from our Sierra Nevada mountains was 60 million acre feet of water in one winter.
Right.
And so a lot of people don't, when they hear 60 million acre feet of water, what does that really mean? What does that translate that for them? Well, I like to just put it into terms of how many people can be, how many people can live on that water for a year. And 300 million people could live on that, almost our entire country for an entire year.
Yeah.
Just think about that. Every city, every man, woman, and child in the United States could have water from just our mountains alone. If you can't capture it all, that's our problem. That's a tremendous amount of water. But if we just make small efforts to be able to capture some of it, a little bit more than what we do now, it can go a long way. And in 2017, we had one of those years. We had all this excessive amount of water. And if we had prepared, places to put it, we'd be sitting in a lot different situation, not just for agriculture, but everything else.
Yeah. Erik, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really important, right? And I learned this many years ago. I did a presentation and I was talking about, a customer who saved so many million gallons of water.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody came up to me after and said, we don't really get what that means.
Yeah.
How much water is that? And so you put in the perspective of how many people I did at the time, how many Olympic swimming pools that would fill. Right. And then, 11 Olympic swimming pools, that's a lot of water. So I think that we have a detachment to water, right? We really don't understand. Right. I turn on the tap all my life, every time water came out. Mostly.
We do that with electricity too. And I think you asked, when we talked before, what can we do to change some of these things? And I think it starts at home in a lot of ways with your young children, of getting them to look at or question, where do things come from? And, when I walk into a grocery store, because I'm in this business, if I see some citrus on the shelf, I see the fruit, but I also see the amount of people and jobs that are behind that fruit. I see the people who made the cardboard boxes. I see the electricians, the plumbers, and everything at the packing facilities, and the concrete guys that made them. You know what I mean? It's an immense amount of people that are involved. And it's the same thing with electricity. We just don't see it, and we just discount it. It's always been there for us. And we need to question where things come from, to reimagine how things got from, really, because a lot of people just think like it's through the store, it's in your tap. That's where it comes from. And it's dangerous. We go down this road, because people don't think we're always going to have food. We're always going to have this. Well, it's a scary road if you don't plan. I think every politician and every person on the top of the top 10 things that government officials should be concerned about, to me, your food supply should be part of that. And sometimes it's not even in the top 10 to me.
Right.
As far as preparing for the future, 20, 50, 100 years down the road.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too is we do have this expectation that we're going to have water forever. It's going to be cheap and plentiful. And when I talk to people, I say, there's many other countries, think of like Saudi Arabia, that don't have 24/7, 365 water, and they just can't believe it. They don't believe it. They say that's a rich, modern country. Yeah, but water is still a problem. Sure. And we just, we very much take it for granted. So one thing I've noticed is on the landscape side of things, and you know a bit about that. You've worked in that area too. Mm-hmm. There's I sit on an advisory board, Cal Water, and we talk about prescriptive things to do. I'm not always big into prescriptive things to do about water savings, but smart controllers for commercial buildings, a certain amount of drip irrigation on every installation. Is that something that exists in ag right now? And if it doesn't, should it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many creative ways that we could save water. It's just getting the resources and the infrastructure in place to do it. I hope that it's like every drought that comes by, it seems like a wasted opportunity that we can get people to get motivated to do something about it. But then it rains. Oh God, thankful that it rains again, but then it gets put back on the back burner again, So.
Yeah. And then the other thing, Erik, I've really noticed too is, we know for sure oil, gasoline, is becoming more scarce every day. It's getting more expensive. This has been a challenge, but as an industry, we didn't say, gee, stop driving your car, stop driving your tractors, don't do these things anymore, where we tend to do that with water, right? Stop using it. And what I think we saw when it came to petroleum products, we said, let's use technology to get more from what we have. Let's figure out ways to get around this. And I finally feel like, and this is very hopeful, I finally feel like we've got the technology to manage water better. And we're starting to see the incentives to do this, right? We don't have as much plentiful water as we thought before, and it's getting really expensive or more expensive. Are you seeing that change too?
Not as quickly as I'd like to. I mean, again, I think we when it comes to water in California, especially, it's because it's scarce. It has created an opportunity. There's a lot of money and power behind, it causes maybe an unwillingness to change in some respects, because you have a scarcity. When you have a scarcity, it increases its worth. And I hope that we can, get to where we can all agree from different aspects of our economy, different jobs, and and political divisions, where we can just finally get to the point where we say, an abundant water supply is beneficial to all, no matter anything else. It's beneficial to all, and I think that how to get there, man, I'd like to hear some responses on how we get there quickly, because I think this water situation, if we don't get a handle on it, it's gonna get to the point where the economy is going to suffer a whole lot. But I think that for me, I want to see California put the stake in the ground and show the world this is how you can do things. You can have a vibrant agricultural industry, a healthy environment, and abundant water supply, and a clean one at that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there, Eric. And when you think about the talent we have for water in the state of California, I mean, we've got the know-how. We've got the people. And you just said something that was really interesting, right? Because at some point, the legislators that don't know, because they're not experts in water, but they're going to say it's a threat to our security as a nation.
It is a food supply, and it is. I mean, we're seeing it right now with our computer chips in our cars. Okay, right now we're in a position where we're a food abundant nation. We can grow things in our country, and we could supply all of our people. We wouldn't have to import anything really, if we managed our crops. I mean, we can. We're in a healthy position for now. But you just see there's hardly any vehicles on the lots that you can buy because we have a shortage of chips. And how would we look, or how smart would it be if that's our food? I mean, how can another country, your adversaries in the world, because it's always going to be that way, won't hold your whole economy ransom if you put yourself in a position where you have a food problem, where you're depending on importing food,
right?
At the majority, scary.
And so that's the key, right? We can't be in a position where we allow the legislators to step in, right? We, as the knowledgeable ones, we have to. I mean, before it gets to that.
In some ways, it sounds kind of weird to say, well, we don't think that it's some people argue, well, California is not the best place to grow food because it's doesn't naturally have it's more arid, and it's not the best place. So let's just not grow crops here anymore. But then in return, that you would hope that countries, in other parts of the world, dam their rivers and provide surface irrigation water to do what? So you can buy their food and import it here, So, I mean, that's why I'm saying about let's be the ones that show the world how we can do it. And because we're, think 100 years from now, for 100 years in advance of what we want to look like,
right? And that's really what we need to be thinking,
right?
need to be projecting that far out. So,
Sure.
yeah. So Eric, what about the communities? What are they starting to feel the impact of the drought?
Yeah, and I think the drought, this is going to be kind of a more complex answer. The droughts in themselves and the reduction, just the water scarcity in general has created a climate in which a lot of family farms that we used to know the names of in these smaller communities are being sold out or bought up by bigger operations. And those bigger operations typically don't spend their money in those towns like the family farmers that lived there. They were on the school boards. They were, part of the community. And one of the things that water, unfortunately, and this is a direct relation to water and the regulations and all that with it, it's pushed that element out of the areas. And so you don't have the money that's generated from these agricultural crops back into your local community. It's going somewhere else. So that's the thing that I see. You see a lot of businesses boarded up, and it's a direct relation to water, 100%.
Yeah.
And this is why I wanted to say my job depends on agriculture in a way to get people to think and step back and say, does yours? Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you're on a Hollywood set somewhere, someone's bringing out a whole, catered meal to everybody. Why? Because they're not growing their own food. They're dependent on someone else to do it. So, you know what I mean? And people, it's a stretch, but food gives us energy to get up in the morning and go to work.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. And, you just said, I think you just said it's a stretch, but, and I maybe used to think that. I don't think I did. I think once I heard it, I said, oh, of course.
Of course, right?
It's like the light bulb goes off and you say,
I mean, it's how civil, it's weird to say, civilization are great because that's where the arts and all the, studies and education occurs. But in our modern world, we've covered ground that could produce food for those people in concrete and asphalt. So by that, every city is an importer of agricultural products to survive. Fuel, electricity, and food. They import it.
And potentially 3 meals a day for everyone.
Right. For everybody. They're importing it. So it's you don't want your neighbor outside that's out there growing it for you. Well, I mean, that's going to be pretty slim pickings. Another thing I like to say is, people don't like water or they get frustrated with agriculture's use. They open your kitchen cabinet and your refrigerator and put all the stuff on one side of the counter that was irrigated and put all the stuff that's on the other side that wasn't. And let me know, take me a picture and show me which one you want to live on. You want to live on this one or you want to live on that supply?
Yeah, I think I'm going to hands down choose the irrigated side every time.
Oh yeah. More abundant yeah.
So listen, what's in store for us from My Job Depends on Ag? What are you guys working on? Anything different, new?
Well, we have that show, American Grow, My Job Depends on Ag, that's going into its 3rd season, and that's been pretty exciting to see. Also, the same producer of that show, I don't know how much our involvement is going to be in it, but because of the great success he had with his first water documentary called Tapped Out, Jeff Aiello, his wife Jill, and 1830 Entertainment, who produced all this, they're going to do another one, which is going to be a drastic change. They did the one in 2000, and I think it came out in 2016, the Tapped Out deal, and it was when we had all this water. It came out 17, so we had all this visual of all this, just basically Lake Orville collapsing, because it was just deluged with water to now. And what did we do as a people? I mean, it's a question. What did we do? And pretty much we didn't do anything, in the last 5 years. We haven't learned our lesson yet. So I'm hopeful that we can learn it for once.
I just watched that Tapped Out.
Did you? How'd you like it?
Somebody brought it to my attention about a week ago, and I started watching it. I'm like, wow, this is 2016 when that came out.
Yeah.
Really, good stuff. And then it's funny because things are bubbling out of the woodwork, right? Somebody at Jane watched Chinatown about a month ago and said, back in the 70s, right? They said this should be mandatory watching for everybody at Jane, really learn about what happened with water in California. I thought, Yeah. So these things are starting to bubble out, right? And this is
Yeah.
good, raising that
Yeah.
awareness, because one thing's for sure is give Americans a challenge, and they're going to pull together and they're going to find that solution.
Sure,
And,
100%.
yeah.
That's why we're here. I mean, that's why California agriculture exists. I mean, it's because there was a group of people, you're probably your grandparents and my great grandparents that were in the middle of the Great Depression, and it affected the entire country, and there was real mass hunger, and the country just said, hey, we got to do something, and before they took the bull by the horns and wanted to make a long-lasting, sustainable, cheap, abundant food supply, and they did it. They figured out a way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, in a great way, and
it's
that's
a
why
big part of why our economy it blossomed so much, and after World War II and all that, all these pieces were putting together, and it's agriculture's part in it can't be denied for sure.
Yeah, yep, big reason why I'm so optimistic today about solving this challenge.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. So Erik, as always, you are such an interesting and fun guest for me to have on. I have really enjoyed this today. Anything else you want to tell our viewers out there about this drought or what's happening in ag now?
Oh, I don't know, man. I just, if you got a kid in the car, the youngsters, challenge them, hey, where did this come from? How many jobs do you think it took to make that? I mean, everything from the artwork on a label on a wine bottle, there's just so many different things that are out there. And I think that we should do that in our schools, challenge our kids to challenge them. Where do things come from? How many jobs took to make it? And then maybe we'll have a greater appreciation of everybody else's jobs, and not only your own.
Yeah, so, I love that. And I'm not just gonna, my kid's 35 now, so I'm not gonna reserve it just for my kid. I'm gonna do it with my coworkers. I mean,
right. I know. I mean, it should be done. We should. When you go in a grocery store, just imagine. I mean, and just to get any commodity that's sitting there, it's just amazing how many jobs it took to get it there. It just blows me away.
Yeah, that's funny. I just always think about how much water, for the cleaning, the producing, the production.
Oh yeah.
Make this even more because, like you said, there's somebody who's running a label and ink and an artist to make it, and it just goes on and on the
there's a lot of bankers and real estate people, and lawyers, and there's all kinds of stuff involved with this stuff, man.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to think about. So
yep.
Anyway, well, thank you again for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Thank all the people out there today for watching. We appreciate that. Remember, all our trainings and interviews are at janesusa.com/trainings. We hope you'll check out the My Job Depends on Ag Facebook page. I know you're supporting all the things that they're doing, and that's wonderful. We appreciate that. I hope everybody has a good weekend. Next week, we're going to be back with some ag technology information on Wednesday. And then Friday, we've got Dr. Gowdy from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo taking us through some irrigation training. So a good week next week.
Nice.
Thanks again, Erik. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you soon. All right.